God of War Sons of Sparta was a huge surprise after the state of play in February, along with the announcement of the God of War trilogy reimagining. I was speculating a $20 price, however, I found it listed as $30, which really caused me to wonder how much was included in this package, and it did not disappoint in terms of its intended design at least. Sons of Sparta is the first out of three I have planned to review for the month of February releases. So let's see how well a look into the past of Kratos in the form of a Super Nintendo game, which isn't the first time we've seen Kratos in pixelated form, two most notably being the 2007 Java-based release of Betrayal and appearing as a boss in Shovel Knight. Just as before, I will describe 5 aspects I loved and 5 aspects I hated. First, with love. Music for each level was extremely welcoming, as if I stepped into an old friend's house after a long time no see. The Super Nintendo mixed with the original God of War notes created moments of childhood flashbacks sitting at my old CRT TV in 2005. I was immersed immediately, thanks to this wonderful score. Level design reminded me of how Cynthia the Night was designed because it's a Metroidvania, obviously, but how navigation tools are earned, which is more frequently and obvious, but equally exciting to see what this new tool will have in store for the journey, which some have unexpected tricks. The platforming complements the enemy placements extremely well, with some classic enemy-based gates appearing that require the player to engage in combat. Puzzles also have a more organic way of doing this by having compromising enemies placed inconveniently. These moments were very refreshing, and I wish there were more with reoccurring gates as well. As a bonus note, there's a secret breakable wall item indicator that can be purchased early for 7,500 red orbs, which increases accessibility for later encounters. Combat was concerning at first, but opens up fairly quickly with ranged attack capabilities, which keeps expanding as you progress. This is especially useful for flying enemies, and enemies you want a higher advantage for. These tools will get advanced attacks with the cost of magic or spirit. In terms of full accessibility, I don't know, and I haven't had the chance to explore the game on that level to see what melts enemies faster. Bosses in the second half are incredible, and I wish I could say the same for the first half. This is where we see what the design is capable of with fun-to-read attacks. With earned punishes, I would love to aim for no damage defeats sometime, to see what else is hidden in the combat details. Some bosses in general also look mildly creepy, which adds to the mystery of what they could look like in a modern-day graphical design. And it's fun to feel my brain put those pieces together, which is one of the major appeals to pixelated designs in my opinion. Endings usually don't pull me in, however, without spoiling it, I really cared about what was happening, and it's not this big action-packed conclusion either, but a calm, doleful moment that can be seen as foreshadowing for one of the previous games, and that was very impactful for me to witness. There's probably an additional ending because I was getting more campaign missions after the credits rolled, so I'm excited to see what that contains. Now with the hate. Bosses in the first half are not that impressive, which can make the game feel underwhelming in that specific department. The projectiles in some of these fights are also not fun to evade or use to your advantage. Difficulty settings is a common aspect of gaming that I very much disagree with, not because I care people select easy mode, but because I prefer organic adjustments significantly more. Plus, it's often that the difficulty options don't change much to matter, and Sons of Sparta is an excellent example of that. There's no mechanic restrictions or changes to enemies or bosses. The only thing I noticed was a slight decrease in defense, so basically if you play on easy, then you can play on the highest difficulty. The game has plenty of organic accessibility such as weapon upgrades, player stat boosting, and boss simplicity. None of the bosses in this game demands a high level of observation to defeat. Enemy health pools in some areas can be so high that bothering to kill each one feels like a chore, especially when these enemies crowd up the player. So unless it was a puzzle or an enemy peel-based gate, I generally just use iframes from rolling and kept the screen moving. Also, if I found an exploitation in level design, I would use a projectile or spear range to speed things up, which was very commonly found. Deimos' birthmark era is very distracting, especially if you know about the character from the older games. I was even questioning what I knew, but the game will decide when it wants to include the detail. As of writing this review, there is no information about correcting this continuity error. Speaking of factual flaws, there were a ton of glitches that hurt my experience with Sons of Sparta, including losing progression several times due to a saving bug, an enemy glitch, a transition hang-up, and frame rate issues at the end of the story. The enemy glitch was especially odd because enemies would not attack or move. I could receive damage by walking into them and then not die, and I eventually got myself permalocked in a challenge area. Some special enemies would die immediately, like the Golden Razorback. I never got to try a boss to see similar results. I'm not sure if these problems are 100% fixed as of now. However, for the sake of this game, I truly hope they are patched soon before too many players lose interest, especially for this busy year of gaming. I have been in touch with the developers about the issues I have been experiencing. My price rating for this game is a little complicated. With the current glitches, I say $25, which is $5 less than the retail price. Now, with all of those problems fixed, I would gladly spend $50 for this game. There's a lot of side content that's engaging. There's in-game content that includes bonus story interactions, and there's also combat accessibility to test out so experienced players can share that knowledge to new players looking for that information. I don't know how many elements affect enemies or bosses, but I'm hoping there's a significance there for accessibility's sake. That is my review for God of War Sons of Sparta. I hope many give this game a try because I want more 2D titles in the franchise continuing young Kratos with his brother Deimos on godly adventures, including adult Kratos narrating. Thank you, and have a great day.